2 days away from the 2024 election, and Donald Trump is so nervous that he is once again publicly lashing out at the Fox propaganda network, of all places, even as his most feared Fox News liberal makes a pretty compelling case against him, humiliating him on a recent Fox News panel. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, got a clip to show you here, but before we get into Trump, because obviously it's fun to see Trump freak out, I just want to remind everybody, Donald Trump can still win this thing. The data do not show an election blowout in favor of the Democrats. The data show pretty consistently that this is basically a coin flip election and either candidate can win. So with all of that we're about to discuss in mind, I want you to remember that Donald Trump is still a threat and he could still win this election. So if you're an eligible voter, make sure you're registered, go out and vote, make a plan to vote. If you are an eligible voter and you don't have voter registration, many states still permit same-day voter registration. So just do a Google search and see if you can go to the polling place, register to vote, and vote the same day. A lot of states permit it, and your vote still counts. Now, let's talk about the Donald Trump freakout, because he's been doing this with increasing frequency throughout this election cycle, lashing out at his top allies in the mainstream media, Fox News. He says Fox News keeps putting on Democrat ads as part of their news program. Their sound bites are almost all of Harris and her Democrat friends, all of whom are on the shows. Fox News is not our friend. It's crazy. Again, the guy who's supposed to be leading the free speech party is freaking out that Fox News is engaging in free speech by interviewing Democrats, by having Democratic ads. And by the way, you can find Trump ads on CNN, on MSNBC, and other places as well. These ads are ubiquitous. But it's only Donald Trump who has this sort of censorious authoritarian impulse. He can't help himself. He demands absolute fealty from right-wing media in both mainstream media and alternative media. And then he wants a free rein to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants with the rest of media. The snowflakery and hypocrisy and thin skin of Donald Trump can't be overstated. But it's important that he does this because it reaffirms to us that despite all the bluster, there's some core of Donald Trump's lizard brain that recognizes he's in serious electoral jeopardy here, that he could lose this election. And that's why he's freaking out that Fox News is doing this. And Fox News did have Arizona Senator Mark Kelly on their show, Fox News Sunday. We're going to probably do a separate video about that. But the other thing I want to point out is that Donald Trump has also a particular problem with specific Fox News correspondents, chiefly Jessica Tarlov, our favorite Fox News liberal. And I want to play you some clips from, or some portions of this panel that she was on Fox News Sunday, where she once again makes a pretty compelling case for Donald Trump's unpopularity, which really strikes to the core of Donald Trump and hits him where it hurts.
And, not undecided, but undeclared, as she said. We don't know.
Yeah, and there are questions, too, Jessica, about whether there are shy Kamala voters. Right. That's part of the conversation, too. I mean, she was late into the game. Her unfavorables are up the longer she's been in the race. And so maybe there are people who say, like, of these two, that's still my choice, but they're not being loud and proud about it.
Well, her favorability, though, is still in positive territory, as is Tim Walz's. He ended up being the most popular character in all of this. And J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are hanging out around -10.
But their favorables are up.
Right. They went from abysmal to just bad, I guess, on there.
They're in the same neighborhood. All of them are sort of in the same neighborhood now.
Either way, Kamala has this shortened campaign. She had to introduce herself to America. She had to make her case, get her platform out there in 100+ days instead of having years. And Donald Trump's been running for president for 9 years at this point.
Let's not forget, however, that when she first got into the race, that's when she was at the highest. She came up this blaze of excitement and
fundraising and polling was excellent.
Oh my God! It was an optimistic campaign and a delirium about somebody who wasn't Biden. In fact, if you think about it, Kamala Harris is where she is for two reasons. One, she's not Biden. The other, she's not Trump. And
for some voters, that's all that matters.
That's exactly.
And again, I just want to say it's so funny how Shannon Bream feels the need to stack the deck against Jessica Tarlov and the Democrats by saying, well, they're kind of all in the same ballpark. Listen, the polls show pretty consistently that Kamala Harris is more popular and better liked than Donald Trump. And the same thing with Governor Walz about J.D. Vance. The Democratic ticket is collectively more popular than the Republican ticket. And what's interesting is Fox still struggles to compute this. They still struggle with this. Now, you can say that the gap between Vice President Harris and Donald Trump is relatively small. And indeed it is, depending on the poll. It's not like it's a double digit lead, but it is a lead. It's still a decisive lead, and it's a consistent lead. And the gap between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance, to Jessica Tarlov's point, is pretty monumental. So what Fox doesn't want to grapple with is that the Democratic candidates, by one extent or another, are better liked than their chosen Republican candidates. And that's a self-inflicted wound. It's entirely possible that Republicans could have found a candidate who could command a popular majority, a candidate that actually might attract people on the other side. But again, the Republicans have this in their mind. And this goes back to what Donald Trump, was ranting about when he was calling out Fox. Donald Trump can't fathom Fox or Republicans doing anything other than appealing to their own base. So he doesn't want Fox to engage with Democrats. He doesn't want Republicans to engage with Democrats. He genuinely seems to believe that if he can just appeal to his right-wing MAGA base, that's all he needs. Because I genuinely believe that Trump thinks that his MAGA cult represents a majority of America, but they never have. Donald Trump lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton by 3 million votes, as unpopular as she was. Donald Trump lost the popular vote to President Biden by 7 million votes, whatever you think about President Biden. And I expect no matter what the outcome is on Tuesday, if Trump wins, it is more likely to be because of an electoral college win than an electoral college and popular vote victory. So again, what they seem to struggle with is that Donald Trump is not, has never been, and never shall be a particularly popular candidate. I want to play the rest of this as well, though.
Exactly right.
And that's it.
But it does seem, can I just say on the undeclared voter or the shy Kamala voter there, it does seem like that's really what's happening with a lot of people, especially with female voters. There's the whisper campaign, people leaving Post-its in women's restrooms, for instance, that your vote is your business. Axios had an article out this week about a survey that showed that 23% of people have admitted that they have lied about who they're voting for. If there was a shy Trump voter, there definitely was in 2016, less so in 2020, but still existed. That number, it feels, would be lower than it has been in the past, and that the shy Kamala voter, if that's even 2-3 percentage points, that could make or break this race.
I feel sad for people who have to lie to their loved ones.
Me too.
You just feel like you should have a relationship where you could just be truthful about who you're voting for.
But the gender gap is the story, I think, of this election.
Yeah.
It's definitely significant.
And so that your loved one may be voting in the other direction.
Which is fine, but if you have to lie about it, then I would suggest a little counseling.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe so you
mentioned this earlier in your interview with the Congresswoman. That's why I can't understand. I thought it was shocking this week that there was no sign of Nikki Haley campaigning for Trump. And I think it was kind of shocking when you stop and think about some of the comments he's made about protecting women. It sounded very controlling. It's like he's not interested in reaching out, especially to Republican women.
Think what the reaction would have been if he talked about not protecting women, Warren.
But I don't know why he got into it.
He can't win on that.
Well,
He could have just not said any of it.
Well, when we get.
So again, that's, I think, a really good point. So Donald Trump commits so many self-inflicted wounds with women in this country, women who represent a majority of this country, women who are more reliable voters in this country. And again, collectively, polls show that he has more of a gender gap with women than Vice President Harris does with men. But Fox doesn't want to devote any time, with the exception of, again, Jessica Tarlov and Juan Williams, to discussing Donald Trump's, I don't want to say preventable issues, because it speaks to just who he is and how he functions as an executive, how he functions as a candidate. But Donald Trump's vulnerabilities with women are entirely his fault. And he seems to be totally disinterested in addressing these or shoring up his support among even Republican women. To Juan Williams' point, Nikki Haley, the most popular alternative to Donald Trump in the Republican primary, the last, figuratively speaking, last man standing, she said that Donald Trump hasn't reached out to her since June, that he has had no interest in bearing the hatchet and campaigning with her. And as a Democrat, I'm glad that he did not do so, because I think it would have made the election even more competitive, given that the Democrats have a theory that Vice President Harris can court Nikki Haley supporters and, women who are more politically aligned with Nikki Haley. But Donald Trump has created that circumstance. Donald Trump, that is his fault, that he is vulnerable on that front. And again, it's so interesting that Fox has no real interest in litigating that. And despite all of that, Donald Trump is still upset with Fox because they have people like Jessica Tarlov on, and they run Democratic ads, and they interview Democratic politicians who make a pretty persuasive case against Trump. Maybe Trump, you just shouldn't be, so unlikable and so incompetent that the case against you is so compelling and so easily made. Food for thought. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.